this is Don Smith. I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Beyond the Lens. And today I want to talk about an image that I posted recently out on my social media channels. And I had some emails from some of you asking if I could do a video and show you how I went about creating this image. It's an image that I found near to where I live here in my hometown of Morro Bay, California. These are actually a type of bougainvillea flower called paper flowers. And the way I discovered that, I have an app on my iPhone called Picture This. And it's an awesome app. If you haven't used it, you can identify basically any flower, tree, shrub out in nature. And it'll tell you what it is. Just hold it up, it works in conjunction with your camera on your smartphone, and it scans it and tells you what it is. It also works kind of cool. If I forgot to do it out on location, I can actually take the picture, come back and scan it right off my computer, and it will make the correct identification there too. So as with a lot of images that I do, they're just not happen chance. Some are, but this one happens to be one that was planned for. And I spotted these bougainvilleas a couple months ago, actually out on a walk during the middle of the day. And I wandered over and held my iPhone up and took some practice pictures with both horizontal and vertical mode, and realized that if I got the sun setting in the correct position, that it could make a beautiful backlit photo of these bougainvilleas in the bay and the sun setting over the sand spit there. So next thing was to hop on my computer and go on the photographer's ephemeris, which I did, to chart where the sun was, when I could get the sun in that location at sunset. And it showed that just a couple weeks ago, it would be in that location. That's an indispensable app that I use all the time. I know a lot of you use photo pills, which can also work, but I just like using, actually I use both, but I like to do my critical planning on the photographer's ephemeris. So once I realized that it was getting into position, it was just then waiting for a clear night where we didn't have any fog. We're kind of in a transition period during October, when the fog is starting to get less and less, and we're getting these more and more clear sky sunset days. So the first shot I got at getting the clear sky sunset day, I went out with my Sony a7R5 that actually has focus bracketing. And so I don't want to go into each individual camera, because I know Nikons and Canons and what have you have their focus stacking, I actually put together a video on my YouTube page you can go look for, where I show you how to set up the a7R5 for focus bracketing. So once I got into position, I wasn't quite sure what lens I was going to use. So I brought my whole bag out, and I started with a 12 to 24 and realized that wasn't going to work. I went to a 16-35, and the 35 mil was still a little bit too loose. So I ended up going to the 24-105, and I'm guessing this was around a 45 mil composition. And I really love that lens. It's very sharp. And what I did is, to make sure the lens was performing at its sharpest, I set it at f11. And you could have been 8 or 11, but I knew it would take more frames. And so I set it at f11. It actually took, I focused on the very front of the very first flower's petal in this frame, and that's where I wanted to set my first focus. And then once you have it set up in camera, you just click and the camera does the rest. It will dial the lens, click, dial the lens, click. 31 frames for this. So that was the first part to get worked out. Second part, shooting back into the sun, we obviously have a discrepancy on our exposures, right? So I ended up having to take 3 sets of exposures, and all 31 frames, I focus bracket each exposure, one for the flowers, one for the bay, and then one for the sky and the setting sun. So that was a lot of frames, right? We ended up with 63 frames, 3 sets of 31. And I'm going to go through now, and I'm going to show you the software that I use. I know a lot of people use Photoshop to combine frames. If I'm only doing like 6, 7, 8 brackets, Photoshop works fine. I find that it tends to get, it doesn't work so well if I'm doing brackets in the amounts in the 20s and 30s like this is. It will tend to maybe skip a frame of focus, which is not good. I got to have every frame registering. So I turn to a program called Helicon Focus. And let's take a look now on the computer. And we're going to first talk about the 3 brackets that I did. Then I'm going to show you how I actually put one set of the brackets together in Helicon, and then how I actually process this image in Photoshop. So let's come on over to the computer and get to work here. So here's the resulting image that was my finished image. And you can see I titled it simply Sunset over Bay and Paper Flowers, Morro Bay, San Luis Obispo County. You're wondering probably why I don't give it like, Dreamy Flowers or some crazy title like that. All my work goes out to Getty Images, so we have to be very descriptive, even when we're adding a headline. That this would be followed up with a caption and then a bunch of keywords. So when a potential buyer is going through looking for images, you never know quite the keywords or what it is that they are going to be searching for. So we can't get into what Getty calls flowery descriptions, and pardon the pun on that. We have to be very descriptive and answer a lot of the who, what, when, where, whys, and hows of the image. So this is the resulting image. One of the things I really loved that I thought I was going to take out when I first got there and spotted this was this spider web. And then as that sun got low and this spider web caught this beautiful warm backlight, that there was just like no way was I going to take it out. That became something that I really wanted to be a part of the image. All right, so before I show you Helicon Focus here, I'm going to show you the 3 sets here in Lightroom. This is the first set we're going to take a look at of 31 combined images exposed for the foreground flowers. And then here is obviously the second set of 31 exposed for the bay and the sand spit, and then the last set of 31 exposed for the sky. So let's take a look at these 3 resulting images out of Helicon. So there's the second image exposed for the bay. Got a little bit of blur here. We had some guys going through in some form of a canoe or a rowboat there. That's what that was. And then the sunset, I could have taken it out, but you'll see in the resulting image, I ended up leaving it in. Here still in Lightroom is all the contacts of all the images that I captured, and all the way down here till we get to the bottom of the sunset. Okay, so why don't we hop over now into Helicon Focus, and we'll show you how we put these together. Okay, so here we are, an exciting looking Helicon Focus, right? This is actually, I advise people, again, if you're going to do these really multiple amounts of frames, 20, 30, 40 images focus stacked, this is really the software you need. Maybe down the line, Photoshop will get a little better with what they're doing, but right now I find that it struggles with that many frames. And this is Helicon Focus. This is the Pro model and the lifetime license. And they're currently, if you're interested in buying, up to version 8.2.2 as of this recording. I highly recommend that you buy the lifetime license. I've owned this for over 10 years now. I started out with Helicon. There was a company actually out of Dallas that sent me a test model of the very first focus stacking device. It sat on the hot shoe of my old Canon lenses. And you just simply dialed in the nearest focus you wanted. Then you dialed in the focus on the furthest thing away in your frame you wanted. And this little unit put it all together. They were going to sell this unit for about $400 or $500, and I don't think it ever actually hit the market. I thought it was really cool, but then I had all these bracketed images, and back then Photoshop had nothing to allow you to put it together. So that company was the first one that put me into Helicon Focus. It worked great. I bought the lifetime license and put it aside for like 6 years, never used it. Opened it up and went and updated my software. It updated right to the current version. It showed that I had a lifetime license, so no messing around on their end. You pay for it and you get it. Okay, so let's bring in one of the stacks here. I'm going to come up here to the file and I'm going to click Open Images. And so you're going to see I have 3 stacks here. I just put these out on my desktop, and I did A is the flowers, B was that second stack bracketed and exposed for the bay, and C was the last one, focus stack and exposed for the sky. So I have the flowers opened, and let's just highlight all of these. And I believe I told you there's 31 of these frames, and I'm going to click Open. And what we do is once we see all of these open, we're going to click Render. And I'm only going to do this through the first stack because you're going to see that this, depending on your computer power, and I have a pretty powerful Mac desktop studio. So you're going to see on the right side, now we're going to get a split frame. So the right side, it's just going to go down frame to frame. And we're just going to go through this the one time, so I'm not putting you through going through all of it. And what it's doing, I want to talk a little bit while it's processing. Down, you have here the rendering methods, and through a lot of testing and talking to the company, I've decided for my landscapes I want to be on method B. My radius, I'm just going to accept 9. And my smoothing, I'm going to put it at 4. Those seems to be the best settings. I don't mess with those settings, and I get great results every time out. So you're seeing it working down frame to frame. It's building that depth map. And what it's doing actually is just going through and looking frame to frame what is in focus and what is not in focus. And then as it hits near the bottom here, what you're going to see is the light grays as it's going through the stack is going to reverse, and it's going to reverse at a much more rapid pace because it's built in the depth map. You can see certain frames it takes a little longer. Let's talk a little bit about breeze. There wasn't much of a breeze out there. Anytime you're doing focus stacking, that's going to be your main nemesis, right? Is if there's a lot of wind. And if there's a lot of wind, that's not probably the ideal time to be working on a focus stack. And there we go. So the right side of the image now is the focus stacked images that I showed you in Lightroom. And when we go to put this output it, we just go back up to File. We're going to go to Save. I don't want to save all. I just want to save the one image of this. And I will name it because it's going to come up a numbered image. You can do that, but I just named it Flowers. And then the second set, when I went through the bay, I named that Bay. And then lastly, the sky. And now I have my 3 images. And now we can go into Photoshop and we can open these 3 images and we'll get to work on the masking. Okay, so now out of Lightroom, I forgot to mention, and I want to mention this, when you right click, instead of just saying edit, you would highlight all 3 images. Instead of just saying edit in Photoshop, you want to go down to the bottom and say open as layers in Photoshop, and then you will get these to open up. And as they open up, they're going to open up all showing. So it's obviously the frame on top, which is the sky image, is what we're seeing here. But if I click on that eyeball holding down the Option Alt button, I can turn that off. And then you can see that I did indeed. Here's the foreground flowers. And there's the bay exposure. And then there's the sky exposure. Okay, so we got all 3 in here. Let's turn all of these back on. Whoops, excuse me. And what I want to do is hold the shift key and shift click all of those to highlight them. I want to come up to edit, and I want to go to align, auto align layers. I don't want to blend these layers. I want to auto align them. And I'm going to click OK. By the way, while they're auto aligning, you may ask, why didn't you go and do an HDR blend of these images, either in an HDR program or in Lightroom? And I did, and it turned out just terrible. Just really, really bad. It didn't align properly. It looked garish. The exposures didn't blend well. And I use Lightroom, and I think Lightroom does the best job of any of these programs putting these all together. Same as Photoshop. So I opted back and said, I'm going to put these together using a mask because I know how to use masks, and that's what we want to get in now and teach you. By the way, if you look here on the edges, you will see that it looks like they're a little misaligned, but it's gotten this pretty well aligned. I'm seeing a little problem up in here. We'll solve that as we get into the editing. So what we're going to want to do now is we're going to want to go through, I'm going to turn these two layers off. And what I first want to do, I've done some basic exposure corrections in Lightroom of each one of these frames before I brought it in. So they're really pretty much ready to go. So what I'm going to do is turn on this next layer, and then we're going to mask back these flowers. So if you come down, we're in the layer stack here. If you come down to the bottom, and I'm going to hover right here over this little icon, rectangular icon with a dark circle in the middle, we're going to, oops, I did that. Let me Command Z to get out of that. I want to highlight that frame, and we're going to add a mask to that frame. Okay? So what it's allowing me to see is the correct exposure for the bay, but I want to actually mask back the flowers. So we're going to do what I call freehand masking on this. I'm not going to select and outline any of this. I could, but I found it was a little bit easier. So what I'm going to do is make sure, I'm going to reset this, make sure you have black over white. And then you can take your brush key, B for brush. And I want to make sure up here, if you look, that the opacity is set for 100% and the flow is set for 100%. And you can dial up or down your brush key. Down here, I can take big swaths of it, right? I'm going to be very careful around the edges because we're going to come back with a smaller brush. We're just taking the main part of this and revealing it. And this is starting to look pretty good already. Now I'm going to take my brush down, and now we're going to come into these areas where I've got to be a little bit more careful, right? Because we're dancing around the edges here. It's okay if you make a mistake. You can always go back and paint it back in. You just flip the mask over and paint back in. That's one of the beautiful things about using masks. You can make mistakes, so don't be afraid that you have to get this just super perfect. I'm going to come down this stem here. All right, and now let's start coming over in here to these flowers. We're going to brighten these guys up. What we're going to do, really what I'm working on now, and my thought process, is to get this blended as best I can, to flatten it as a single frame, as if this was the way it came out of the camera. And for those of you rather new with photography and landscape photography, what you have to understand is our cameras cannot see, our sensors basically cannot record as well as our eyes can. And that's a huge thing for beginning photographers and even some intermediate photographers to get that concept or understand that concept that our eyes see much better than sensors do. And there'll be a day, I don't know how soon, some of the engineers at Sony have told me as long as 8 to 10 years, when the sensors will be as good, if maybe even not better, than our eyes. I'm tending to think AI is going to play a big part of this, but I am not an engineer. Let me come in here and get that area. And I may not be doing this perfectly, you guys, because we're doing a video here. And obviously, if you were to do something like this, you could spend all the time you wanted on this. Okay, so I think that's looking pretty good. I think I missed a section down in here. Let's check out the mask. I'm gonna hold the Option Alt key and click. You can see I missed a little section here, a little section here, but these are all where I got a little more intricate, right? So let's come back over in here. Yeah, it was right along the edge there, and I think I said I missed something back over in here. So this is really a big help to see where I've missed. You can see right down there on the bottom, which is probably neither here nor there, because I'm going to probably end up vignetting that a little bit, but we shall see. Again, try to do as good a blend job as you can. Okay, as far as what I'm seeing, we're pretty close to a go. And now we're going to come up here and highlight the sky. I'm going to add a mask. I'm still in the brush mode, black. And you know what I'm going to do here? I'm going to do something opposite. Instead of trying to brush all of this in, now let's see. I can go about this two ways. No, I think I am going to do it that way. What I was going to say is I could actually take this, and I believe it's Command-I, and make it black and then paint it in. But I'm going to hold my Command or Control and the I key. I'm going to leave it white because I think it's easier to just paint this all out. So I've got black to paint it because now I just have to hold below that sand spit, right? If you're following me there, and let the sky blend in, and everything else I'm taking out at 100%. So you can work it both ways, whatever way tends to work best for you. I go the path of least resistance. The more you do this, the more you will get the handle on it. And I don't know what I hit there. I'm gonna come back. Well, we'll just go back onto here. And whoopsie. Oh, I was off the mask. That's why. Always make sure, I'm glad I did that. Always make sure you've got the mask highlighted. Okay. And as I said, I'm kind of doing, if I don't want to open up, for example, this leaf a full amount, I could flip the mask, type the X key. Now you're seeing white over black over here. And maybe I lower it down to 50%. And I can paint back at 50% or whatever percentage you want. So you can certainly play with that. I think that because that's up near the frame, top of the frame, and I'm going to flip again. I don't want to pull the eye up there too much. We'll paint back that little stem. And okay, it's not perfect, especially up here, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do something. If you have the Tony Kuiper panel, you can come right here to this icon and create a stamp layer. And basically it's going to take all three layers below and it's going to stamp it into one. But if you don't have the Tony Kuiper panel, you're going to take the Shift, Option, Alt, Control, Command, and E, and you can put that in. Whoop, I put two in by mistake, so let me take one out. And now we call this stamped. So now this is functioning as just one layer, one picture. And I could go through, like I see a little thing here. I'm going to take the zoom tool and I could go up. I'm going to get my remove tool. I love this tool. You can see where this is where we had a little bit of breeze and this leaf didn't quite register correctly. So I'm just going to kind of do this real quickly. And I don't think I'm doing a good job there. Excuse me for that. We're going to go Command Z. I may actually take, let's take the stamp tool, the clone tool, and I would do a better job. I'm going to come out here to pick this up and maybe paint in something like that. I'm doing a terrible job because I'm rushing. And but there's different ways. I'm going to come back into. I would come back into my history. My history palette's actually closed, so let's open it. We would come here, go to history. This is if any of your palettes are closed, you can back out of everything just by going to history. But I would find the tool that would work best on that. And yeah, and then I could go ahead and do whatever extra little processing I wanted to do on this. I'm not going to get through and process a whole image here for you. I've done other videos where I've done that. But this was to kind of show you how I went about putting, my thought process, envisioning this image prior to going out and capturing it, determining when that sun's going to be in the optimum position. We mentioned the photographer's ephemeris, and then just working through the technical of the, obviously it has to be photo stacked. You can see it's razor sharp from these front petals here. I would say that's probably the closest one, maybe even that one. And just let the camera do its thing in focus stack mode, and then bracket the exposures. And that's how this image was done. It's not hard if you understand and that you have to follow a line of reasoning with all of this. Somebody had asked me the other day, why didn't you just take one picture of the sky and mask that in? Perhaps I could have done that, but I CYA, which you guys know what I'm talking about. Cover your rear end, right? So that's why I did it in a focus stack. I would have had that one frame if I could have done it that way, but I opted to do it this way and using mask, just freehanding it and blending it all together. So that's, if you haven't tried this, and this is something focus stacking and exposure blending interests you, there you go. Now you understand the basics of it, and it's really like anything else in photography. You got to go out and you got to practice it, and practice it and practice it and practice it some more. And before you know it, you'll get pretty darn good at what you're doing, and you'll be able to put this type of an image together. Okay, so hey, I hope this helped you guys out. And, if you're interested in any topics you want me to cover, we're kind of freeform here. We just had Carrie Drager on last month. I do plan to do guests once a month, but send me an email, don@donsmithphotography.com, and suggest some show titles you would like to see. And I'll give you credit if we end up doing a show off your idea. I'm open to doing a lot of stuff. Processing, out on location shoots, various guests. So yeah, send us along your ideas, and maybe we'll do a show based around your idea. So hey, until next time, get those cameras off the shelf, you guys. They're not doing you any good on the shelves. Get out, have some fun, get in nature, feel relaxed, create, and do your own thing out there. It's good for the soul. So until next week, this is Don Smith. You take care.